Welcome to the Self Love Uncensored Podcast. We are your hosts. I am Vanessa McWilliams.
And I am Amanda Wozni.
And we are self-proclaimed experts in all things self-love.
Here you'll find uncensored discussions about life, living unapologetically, and becoming our best selves. Welcome to today's episode. We're so grateful you're here. We have a very interesting to talk about today. We are going to talk about perfectionism over having the mindset of progress, not perfection.
So good.
Yes. So this one kind of came to my mind a couple of weeks ago. I was listening to another podcast. I can't even remember which one it was now. And it was just kind of a little brief blurb in it. And they talked about the side effects, the health side effects of perfectionism. And I was like, what? Mm-hmm. Say what? Like I rewound it and listened again and listened. And then I went on Google and I was like, holy crap. Like you realize that it has a mental aspect to it, but the actual physical side effects that can transpire because of just trying to be perfect in your life is crazy, crazy. And I feel like both of us have probably at some point or continually do still kind of suffer from perfectionism here and there. I know I do. I can't speak for you, but would you say that's true for you too?
110%. 110%. And I just looked up on my phone the definition of perfectionism, just in case anybody has never heard the term, because I know a couple of years ago, I wasn't even really somebody who had thought of the term of perfectionism. I just thought that I just want everything to be like perfect. And if I can't do it, no one can do it better than me. I kind of had that mindset for myself, and I had a hard time asking for help and stuff. So the definition of perfectionism is often defined as the need to be or appear to be perfect, or even to believe that it's possible to achieve perfection. It is typically viewed as a positive trait rather than a flaw. People may use the term healthy perfectionism to describe or justify perfectionistic behavior. And as I'm like reading that, I was like, oh, fuck, this was me. Like, this is me. Like, let's be real. I still struggle with this.
Yes, I'm that way too. And like, this can also be summed up in the all or nothing mentality. It's the same thing, right? Like, a really easy one that most people can relate to is in the sense of nutrition or in the typical word of diet, right? Like, if I didn't eat perfectly all day, then what's the point? I may as well just eat whatever I want and I'll start again tomorrow or start again on Monday, right? Whereas if we had the mentality that, okay, I had a salad for lunch and then I super bad wanted a couple cookies. So I ate a couple cookies. It's done. I feel satisfied. I had what I wanted. I satisfied my craving. Now at supper, let's just try and do a little bit better, more in alignment with our goals. I mean, not the cookies are bad. That's not what I'm trying to imply, but
totally.
Like we totally, and I think most people will relate to that feeling of wanting things to be like you have this preconceived idea in your head of how it should happen, whether it's food or anything else in life. And when it doesn't go that way, you just want to throw in the towel and say, fuck it. Right.
Yeah. 100%. I know myself, I'm a binge eater. So I'm somebody who, like, if I do end up having a cookie or two cookies, I end up like falling face first into the entire package of cookies. Cause I'm like, whatever, I've already eaten 2. What's 5 or 6 more going to be? Right.
Exactly.
And I have a really hard time. I can't say all the time, but I have a hard time sometimes, especially around Shark Week, that I just can't stop. And I know it's totally that all or nothing mentality. Like, well, I already jumped off the ship. Like I already jumped off the boat. Let's just fuck it up even more. Right. Like, who cares? I can't go back.
Who cares if it's 1 or 20 when in reality, like you could have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 and it's better than 20.
Yeah.
Right. Like I think
it's the whole shame, right? Like I just, I get into that mentality of like, well, I fucked up. I had 4 cookies when I could have just had 2. And then like that itty bitty shitty committee starts in your head. Right. And for me, it ties back to shame. Like my perfectionism, my wanting to control like everything ties into shame for me, which is something we'll talk about in a little bit, but like,
yeah, I think most people's does, right? Like, even the articles I was reading when I was looking into this, like a lot of what ties into our perfectionism is meeting our parents' standards, generally speaking.
Yes.
And it happens even when you're a grown-up, right? Like the expectations that were placed on you to do well, to behave a certain way, to get certain marks, to eat a certain way, to look a certain way, whatever, like that's where it's tied back to. And whether your parents actually shamed you or not, just having that expectation placed on you was enough to make you feel shame if you didn't meet those targets, right?
Well, and you know, we're raised in a certain way and we're raised with these different values and these different expectations. And then you're let out into the world expected to know how to adult. And I don't think I'm freaking gonna be 37 next month and I don't fucking know what I'm doing, right? Like we're expected to know how to do all the things and how to adult. And then we get thrown out into it. And it's like, you're born again. You have to figure all this stuff out for yourself. And then on top of it, you have all these expectations. And then not only the expectations that you've been, and I mean, I don't think our parents are ever going to listen to this and be like, don't feel bad. We don't have expectations on you, right? And we're not saying that at all. Like we get it. We're giving our parents massive grace, but like we are raised with those expectations. And then on top of it, once we do become adults and we are out on our own, we have societal expectations. Like, how many times have I ever heard, you know, even when with me, myself, I have 2 boys. You know how many times I hear from people like, oh, are you guys going to try to have a girl? No, because I'll end up with another boy.
I have 3 boys and I get the same thing all the time. It's like, if I could be guaranteed to have a girl, then probably. If I had another boy, I probably would give birth, pack my bags, and like escape to Mexico by myself.
Right?
I love them, but holy crap, they're busy.
Right? Yeah. And that's just it. Like we have this expectation put on us that you need to have the house, you need to have the mortgage, you need to have the house, you need to have the 2 cars, the white picket fence, 2 kids,
the 2.5 kids.
The 2.5 kids, right? Like it's just, it's never ending. And I think that that's where perfectionism really hides is you know, it lives within most of us. I can't talk for everybody, but it lives within most of us. And a lot of times it comes out as shame and it comes out as feeling guilty and it comes out as feeling like you're not enough because you don't think you're doing a good enough job to hold up to what today's standards are. And this ties into like even self-love stuff, right? Like it ties into the whole body image and the way your body looks is supposed to look a certain way. And it's really interesting because right now, especially on social media, that it's spring, well, it's almost spring and summer's coming and everybody's now, you know, the diet ads are on fucking fire right now. My Facebook is full of, like, my Facebook feed is full of diet ads and stuff. And I go back and I report them all. I'm like, I don't want this bullshit on my
summer
feed.
Body.
Yes. All that stuff, right? Like that's a whole other new expectation in the world is like, oh, you've lived through an entire year of a pandemic, which is like full of stress, which of course stress affects your hormones, which of course affects your weight, which is fine. Most of us have gained weight over quarantine, which is completely okay. Our bodies are keeping us alive. They're doing what they're doing. It's good. It's good. The weight gain is fine. It's not a big deal. But now all of a sudden we're expected to have like summer bodies again. What the fuck is a summer body? Like
it's the body that you have, everybody.
My body is going to be my body in the summer. Like I'm going to slap a bathing suit on it and it's a bathing suit body. Like but it comes back to that again, right? Like all that shame again. And, oh no, you shouldn't be overweight now. Like you've got time to fix it before summer. And it's like,
to get the perfect body.
Well, like it just, it's never ending. It's so fucking relentless. And that's why I think like today's episode is so good to talk about the perfection versus progress, not perfection. Because you and I both, I mean, I can only speak for me, but I know your story and I hope I can speak for you, that we both were taught when we did all of our self-development stuff, not only taught, but we started seeing that just actually taking the small incremental steps gets you so much farther than getting stuck in analysis paralysis because you're trying to figure out the perfect way to do something, whether it's you're afraid to fail or you're afraid to look dumb or you're afraid to start small. And even like we were just talking about this before we hit record, that even this podcast, like we've fucked up so many things on this podcast so far that if we wanted it to be perfect, we never would have shot the first episode.
No, we never would have started.
No, we started with not great headphones,
And
started
how
with not
many,
great microphones. We
yeah,
screwed
I
up a
wonder
Zoom
how
call.
many, like how many journeys or businesses or ideas or whatever die inside people's minds because they won't start because they want it to
Yes.
be perfect and they don't know how to do it. Right.
Yes.
So,
Which is
okay, well, I
such a
want to go over these
shame.
symptoms because I want to talk about this,
Yes.
that I like. I think this is a little bit of shock factor is what I had from it. And we talked about this too before we started, that we don't want to imply that any of these things are bad. If you feel like you resonate with somebody who might be a perfectionist and you have some of these physical symptoms, we're not saying that they're for surely related. Like, we're not medical professionals or anything like that. This is strictly just to bring awareness. Because like I said, for myself, as somebody who definitely is a perfectionist, and I will be for my whole life, like it's hardly something I think that you can cure yourself of. It will always be there. You can get better at it. I was just so surprised by this. So, perfectionist tendencies have been linked to a laundry list of clinical issues, including depression and anxiety, even in children, self-harm, social anxiety disorder and agoraphobia, so fear of going outside, obsessive compulsive disorder, binge eating, anorexia, bulimia, and other eating disorders, post-traumatic stress disorder, chronic fatigue syndrome, insomnia, hoarding, dyspepsia, which I actually don't even know. We should probably look that one up.
I was just going to say, when you were reading it, I was like, I don't know how to say that word.
Hopefully I said it right. Chronic headaches. And of course, the worst of all is that there's actually links to early mortality and suicide. In the one article I read, it was a study that was done, I believe it said of 1,000 people, and there was a 51% increase in risk of death of people who were identified in the negative sense of perfectionism, because there kind of is in the scientific community, they're saying that there's an adaptive or healthy perfectionism, which is basically characteristics of having high standards, high motivation, discipline, stuff like that to work towards your goals. And then there's a maladaptive or unhealthy version, where basically your best never seems good enough. You lack self-worth, not meeting goals frustrates you, and that kind of thing throws you completely off track from everything that is good in your life and turns everything into negative just from like the smallest of mistakes. So yeah, that's a pretty big and pretty serious list of stuff. Like,
yeah. And I resonate with a couple of things on that list myself. Like, I know depression is something that I've struggled with since I don't struggle with it right now. But I've had bouts of depression, especially as a teenager, because I couldn't control what was happening to me. And that just ties back into my whole alopecia journey, right? Like, that's exactly the thing is I didn't meet the standard that was set for me. And just as a human, because I look different, right? And so that was a really big thing I had to struggle with when I was a teenager, was depression. I have anxiety. I have high functioning anxiety. I've been diagnosed with ADD, ADHD, and high functioning anxiety. And that was one of the things that came up when I was doing my testing, was perfectionism questions. And that's one of the things for me, is that I do, if I have something that I want to try, and I know that I can't do it very well. I told you my phone was going to ring. I can't do it very well. It really does tie into the whole shame for me. And it stops me from trying, because I have that fear-based thinking sometimes. And it's that just itty bitty shitty committee in the back of your head, right? That tells you, like, if I can't do it right, what are people going to think? Or if I can't do it right, what's the point? Right. And so that's the thing.
Which can be a good thing sometimes, because
Yes.
sometimes it can force you, like, if and when you do take action, you're going to do your absolute best, right? Whether you're impressing yourself or somebody else. But it's when it comes over into the side of, you're right, like analysis paralysis, where you quit completely doing whatever it is you're doing. Or like it holds you back from things in life. It can go so far as to affect your relationships and everything, right? Because your perfectionism cannot just be internal for yourself. You can project it onto other people too. So
100%.
I looked up dyspepsia while you were talking, and it's indigestion. So it can actually cause your body to have indigestion from the stress of perfectionism.
That doesn't surprise me whatsoever.
Yeah. Well, it kind of
whatsoever.
goes along with the other stuff, right? Like, yeah.
A lot of it comes down to stress. Just the overall stress of not being good enough, and the overall stress of feeling like who you are isn't enough just as you are.
Yeah.
And yeah, that can mess with you. I know myself, a couple of years back, we went through that massive, I won't get into it, but we went through that massive year and a half of pure hell. And oh, I had so many digestion issues. Like, I was going to the doctor because I was thinking like, I'm dying. And he's like, no, you just have anxiety. It's okay. And I was like, no, I'm dying. But it was the same thing. Like, I was not able to, like, TMI. I wasn't able to have great poops. Like, it really does mess with your system. Right. But I mean,
oh yeah,
perfectionism was a huge thing for me in that 18 months that we were dealing with that, because it was a massive failure and it was not our fault. But just to know that, like, the things happened and blah, blah, blah. And there was nothing that we could do to change it, just still made us feel like massive failures. Right. And that it totally messes with you. 110%. Right. So this
and
is,
I think,
go.
I think what we should focus on, so now that we've kind of outlined what perfectionism looks like, what it is, people can identify maybe some physical ailments that they might have linking to it. We need to talk about the flip side of it, which is the progress over perfection. So that means instead of focusing on things being perfect, you want to focus on little actionable steps that are within your control that will overall lead to not perfectionism, but progress. So think about it in the sense that if we did 4 different tasks and we got 0% on 2 of them, and we got 100% on 2 of them. So we didn't do 2 because we were afraid of perfectionism. And we did 2 perfectly because we knew we could and we executed. Our average is going to come in at 50%, which is kind of not great, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if we take the progress, not perfection mentality, and let's just overlay it with food because it's simple. So say we eat really good until supper, and then after supper, we have our 5 cookies, right? Over the course of the day, what is that? Maybe 5, maybe 10% of your calories or whatever you consumed that wasn't ideal, and everything else was good. So now we have 90 or 95%. If we do that 4 times over 4 different decisions, what's our average? Between 90 and 95%. So what would you rather have? Something that's just slightly imperfect, but we're still giving our best and allowing ourselves grace for mistakes, or completely stopping ourselves from doing something because we're scared shitless of fucking it up, and then waiting until something comes along that we can execute perfectly, and our average falls way down from where we should be.
Totally.
And which scenario is going to make us feel better about ourselves, right? Like, sure, you feel great when you accomplish something perfectly, but you feel like absolute trash when you don't do something that you know you could have done, just maybe not 100%.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, the feeling, I always, this is one thing that I always have to tell myself, is like, how am I going to feel if I don't do the thing? Especially the things that scare me. I know that the things that scare me the most are the things that my soul needs to do, that I need to do because it means something to me. Right. The things that don't matter to me, I don't have that push to do them because they're not meant for my purpose. Right. And that's the thing, is like, I've for years gotten stuck with, well, for instance, I did a podcast like 2 years ago, and I did 1 episode by myself, and it had to be perfect. Like, this is the perfect example. I had my laptop. I didn't have a microphone yet, a proper microphone. And I went into my closet because it was like the innermost part of my house. So nothing, you weren't going to hear buses drive by me because I live on a main drag on, in my community. And so you hear the buses drive by and all the things. And I sat there and I was like, okay, podcasters sound like this. And I was talking like this. And I was not me, but that was like the way that I thought people, like, that podcasters showed up. Right. And it was fucking garbage. Like, thank God. Thank you for ahead of time for all the people who actually tuned in and listened. I think I had like 5 people because it was garbage. And I think 2 days after I released it, I took it off because I was like, that is not good. And it was not good. But that's the thing, is I got so stuck in, like, it took me not even kidding, 4 or 5 days to actually grow the balls to go and sit in my walk-in closet and actually hit record, because I was so paralyzed by, well, what am I going to say? How am I going to say it? Oh, shit, a bus just drove by, and I'd hit stop and then I'd hit record again. Right. Like, and then I edited the crap out of it, and it never sounded like me. It wasn't truth, true to who I am, but that was the perfectionist in me. Like, I have to show up as this person. And even with this podcast, like we hinted before, there's been a couple things we've screwed up on this podcast so far, and we're not afraid to say it. Like, yesterday, my best friend texted me and she was like, I can only see you on the YouTube Zoom. And I'm like, I know, I had the wrong speaker view on the gallery when we recorded. So it's only me.
Yeah.
We still released it, right? Like,
and it was a lesson. Okay. So now we have a note to remind us what setting to go on. So that shouldn't happen again. Like,
right? Oh,
progress.
Yeah. Like, exactly. Like, doing the imperfect actions, the small imperfect actions get you so much farther than sitting in the, well, what if, but I have to do this first, and I have to do this first. And it's like, just, oh my God, we're on a roll today. Just hit record, right? Like, So it's the small imperfect actions that over time get you farther than if you were to actually sit and wait for the perfect time to do something, because that perfect time will never come.
Yeah.
There will never be a perfect time.
I think for me, as somebody that struggles with it, I also would rather now be identified, like, with myself and other people as somebody who is authentic to who I am versus being known as somebody who's really great at everything she does. Right. Like, even, and you're right. Like, this podcast is a prime example. I haven't done one before that was crappy, but I mean, like, we talked about it. We're like, okay, fuck it, just hit record. Let's see what happens. And like, we haven't had to edit, knock on wood, a single one yet. Like, they've been great because we're just showing up as who we are, and we're just being us and not worried about being perfect, where we can screw up. Sometimes we listen to them back and we're like, oh my God, I can't believe I said that. But whatever, like, it's obviously resonating with people, right? So they want to see that authenticity. So I think if we can leave our listeners with anything today, it would be to focus on the progress, not perfection, and show up authentically in life, and quit worrying about the perfection. Is not as simple as just quit worrying about it. But if it's in your head, to at least start thinking about and being conscious about in your small decisions. Like, it doesn't need to be life-changing, crazy things that you're going to overhaul. Like, it's just little teeny tiny steps that over time, they're just going to take you in a different direction.
Well, and it comes down to, like, everything we teach about goal setting and stuff, right? Like, when you have this big goal, this big dream, even if it's a small goal, but it feels big, like, you don't look at the big goal as a whole, because then you get analysis paralysis and you're like, holy shit, how am I going to make that happen? You dumb it down for yourself, right? Like, you think of the small little chunks that you can do today and tomorrow, and you just do those things, and then you're a little bit ahead of where you were yesterday, and then you're a little bit ahead of where you were the next day, etc. And those things start to grow self-love as well, because that's where you start to feel accomplished versus getting stuck in your head thinking, well, if I can't do it the right way, the first time, what's the point? Because then you start feeling guilt and shame and all that yuckiness, right? And that's the thing. If you take the small little imperfect steps, give yourself massive grace. Like, even with us doing this podcast, like I've said, a lot of people don't know how to do a podcast. So if we screw this up, we're ahead of a lot of people already, right? Like, and that's not a jab or nothing. It's just, we've hit record and we do the thing. And that's just it. And I think with everything in life, like, we're never going to be able to do anything perfect. Having the human experience has to include failure, because I think if we don't have failure, how are we able to have the scale of knowing what success is? Failures aren't bad. I'm a huge believer in fail fast. Like, try new things, do them really fast. Don't get stuck in, trying to think of how to execute something perfectly. Try doing something really, new, really fast, fail fast, because the quicker you get accustomed to failing, the quicker you get accustomed to feeling successful, because the no's, for instance, me, I've got a book coming out and I'm trying to land an agent for it. And you know how fucking sucky it is to get a no from someone, like, but it's like, I keep going after the no's because every time I get a no, I know my yes is one more away. Right. And
Yeah.
so it's, but you know, there was a couple days where I first started sending out emails and stuff. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to send this. It's not totally perfect. And then I was like, no, fucking send, you know, like
Yep.
I did my best. I know it's good. This is totally me. Send, because you can get stuck in that, like, well, I could change this and I could change that. And all of a sudden, you know, it's nothing in the grand scheme of
and
it,
I think the other side of that too is like there is a before part of that hesitation, but there's also that after part where you like want to kill yourself inside, where you're like, oh my God, did I say the right thing? Did I do it the right way? Did I upset this person? And I think that's one of the things for me that I definitely struggled with figuring out how to do, but I am better at it now. And when I have those things come up, like some of them are really significant for me that I can think of in recent years, things that kind of like almost take your breath away when those memories come up and you're like, oh, I can't believe. And I try to just acknowledge it. Like, okay, yep, but it's in the past. There's nothing I can do about it. I am not giving that shit another ounce of my energy because it's already sucked it out of me. How many times? Like, thank you for reminding me, brain, and see you later. Like, we got stuff to do. Like, I'm not that person anymore. I learned from that mistake. I'm not going to make it again. And the other side of perfectionism and like that progress over perfection is, like giving yourself grace to make mistakes. But when those mistakes come back and try and haunt you and try and remind you that you're a failure and that you're not perfect, acknowledge them and then send them packing. Like, you don't need to dwell on them. You weren't who you were 5 minutes ago. So if you made a mistake 5 minutes ago, you're a whole new person and you get to start all over right now.
It's so fascinating on social media and stuff now that we have like the Facebook memories, for instance, that pop up. Man, there's some Facebook memories that have come up from like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years ago. And I'm like, oh, Vanessa was a Vanessa hadn't started our journey yet. Wow. Like,
you can see the difference in negativity.
Holy man. Like, where I used to live.
In the same way.
Yeah.
And the things you used to post about, you'd be like, you went to social media because you were mad, not because you wanted to post something happy or inspiring or whatever. And I try to not contribute to that environment anymore online as much as I can.
Yeah. Totally.
Again, that's why I write lots of responses and then delete them because I got them out there, but they're not actually out there for anybody else to see.
That's one thing that I tell a lot of my coaching clients. Like, if there's something that you really need to like say, write it down and burn it. Write it down. Say the things you need to say to a person and then tear it up and throw it out or burn it. Like, just don't send the thing, because it does, right? But that's the thing. Like, with perfectionism, I think I said again, I can't speak for everybody, but I know many, and we know many people who, even just in our circle with self-development work and coaches and stuff, like we all struggle with perfectionism in a little bit of a way, right? Because we're the people who coach people and teach people how to do the things, and we still struggle with it. Like, I don't think I know many people who are even higher up than us in the coaching world struggle with perfection, because it's just that seemingly wanting to look like they know what they're doing. Because if you have a certain title, it's like, well, you should know this or whatever, right? And it's like most people are just, they're doing what we're doing, and they're just trying something new, and they're doing the small actionable actions that get them a little bit farther along. And that's just it's progress. That's when it comes down to it. It's like, dumb it down for yourself. What is something that you really want to do? What's stopping you? And what is one small thing you can do today that's going to get you closer, right? Because you won't climb Everest overnight. That's the way I always like to think of it. Rome wasn't built in a day. Right.
And even that, like, that's a good analogy for it, that like, do you think that there's a perfect way to climb it? Like, you got to step on exactly this rock and then exactly that dirt pile. Like, that's totally, it's unrealistic. And that's part of what I read in this article, is that perfectionism isn't about high standards. It's about unrealistic expectations. And that it isn't a behavior. Perfectionism isn't a behavior. It's a way of thinking about yourself and how you internally speak to yourself.
Yeah. And we know, like, and of course, like you said before, we know mental health, like there's a whole other thing, and mental health is something that a lot of people that they don't have control over. I know myself with anxiety, with bouts of depression and stuff, like that's not something that I could be like, oh, I'm just not depressed today. Like we totally understand that there's lots of things that lead into perfectionistic behaviors and those feelings and stuff that you just can't control because it's just the way your mind is set up. And
they need to be medicated and stuff to be managed, which is perfectly normal.
It's perfectly normal. Like we are big advocates around here for do what you need to do to live your best life. Like we don't judge whatsoever. We both have our own journeys and our own struggles with mental health and stuff. And that's the thing. We just wanted to do this episode because I think it's so important to be able to say, like, it's one thing to think, okay, yes, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, but then it's like, but these are the things that can really be damaging. And if you can control, because a lot of people can't, but if you can control the things and you can override that little itty bitty shitty committee in the back of your mind, it's really good to start acknowledging that and start, doing little things that can get you a little bit farther away from that mindset. But like I said, if mental health is also a concern, and that's okay. It's just understanding that it's okay that you're not perfect. Like none of us are perfect. Oh, here comes spicy Vanessa. I always feel her. Nobody's perfect. And that's the illusion that we can get so stuck in. What a boring
fucking world it would be if we were perfect. Right? Like, then we would all be the same. There would be like a standard for how you do your job or how you cook your supper. And we'd be like robots. Like our imperfections are what make us unique. That's why we're all different and why we're all amazing.
We all have special gifts that we've been given that are meant to be given to the world through us, through our imperfections. And that's just it. Like if you live your life trying to be perfect, it's the saddest thing, I think, because, and I don't say that in a bad way. I'm really only speaking for myself. And I had this epiphany a couple of years ago when I decided to stop wearing my wigs, that if I continue to try and show up, like I was doing everything I could to fit into what society deemed beautiful, right? I wore the wigs, which is fine. If you wear a wig, I'm not sending any hurt out to you whatsoever. But for me, if I continued to wear the wigs and wore the makeup and did all the things and did all the diets just to make myself look good, I was fucking miserable. And I realized, I had an epiphany one day that if I keep trying to chase this idea of what society wants me to look like, that's fucking perfectionism right there. In my life, right? But if I continue to try and chase that, I'm giving all my energy away to something that doesn't exist. And I'm not showing up as Vanessa.
And to people that you don't even know if they care. Like,
right?
When I go out in the world, I don't look at people and be like, oh man, I sure hope that woman's working on her weight. And I sure hope that lady's going to color her hair because she looks like crap. Like, most people don't go out into the world and act like judgmental assholes, even though in our head, we have that inner dialogue, that inner critic. Oh, that guy looked at you for a second. He thinks you're fat. Oh, that person, saw you do this. They think you're an idiot. Like, that's us. That's us talking to us. That's not the world talking to us. That's not other people talking to us. And that is like, you nailed it. Like, that's literally what perfectionism is. It's that voice in your head that wants to just rip you to fucking shreds every chance it can get and tell you that you are not good enough. And it's wrong.
It totally is. It's your subconscious. It's the survival brain, right? We don't have mastodons and saber-toothed tigers hunting us, friends. We don't have to worry about our subconscious brains, right? Like that's where fight or flight, right? And that's the thing is when it comes to perfectionism, like we live in a very different world from when mastodons ruled the world, right? Like if you believe in that, I don't know, it doesn't matter. But we don't need to worry about that anymore. But we are still living with however many million-year-old brains we have that are
we're
for survival.
Biologically programmed for that kind of response. And sometimes it's not, oftentimes it's not a physical threat. I mean, there definitely still are instances in the world where we do face a physical threat, a fight, or, our soldiers that go overseas and fight wars for us and stuff like that. That's different. But your body and the way that your central nervous system responds to stress doesn't know if it's a saber-toothed tiger or you looked in the mirror and you think you're fat. Like
Which is so
it's doing the
messed up.
same. I know, right? It is. It's
It can't
crazy.
decipher that, right? And that's just it. Like, and I'm going to give you a prime example. I'll be super vulnerable here because I'm going to sound like a gigantic asshole. I still, I say this with love. I still have that I still have that itty bitty shitty committee that tells me all the things in the back of my head that I'm not good enough and stuff. And a couple of weeks ago, I had met a friend for lunch, and we're COVID safe. Don't worry, it's all good. We were following restrictions, and we went out for lunch. And once you leave your table, you of course have to put your mask on to walk around the restaurant, right? Well, the restaurant wasn't busy. I'd taken my mask off. We were sitting having lunch, and I had to use the bathroom so bad about halfway through, and I just got up from the table and walked across the restaurant. And as I was walking across, all these people were staring at me. And in the back of my mind, I was like, God, people still stare at me. Like, everyone here knows I'm bald. Like, but that's my old narrative in my mind, right? That like, oh, people are staring at you because you're bald. You're different. You're ugly. You should be wearing
You're
a wig.
just a
like,
different kind of bald now.
Starts, right? Right? Yeah. And I was like, oh my God. But I went to the bathroom. Like, I had not clued in yet. I was just in that brain set of, oh, these people are staring at me because I'm bald. And then as I'm walking back across the restaurant after using the bathroom, the waitress comes right up to me and she's like, ma'am, we need to ask you to put your mask on anytime you leave your table. And I was like, oh my God, I forgot to put my mask on. So then of course, everyone in the restaurant, and there's only like 4 tables. It wasn't packed.
Yeah.
But those 4 tables, of course, like everyone can hear her. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. So I put my shirt over my face, and my friend is laughing at me from across the fucking restaurant. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. And I thought, there you go, Vanessa. Like, perfect example of my perfectionistic tendencies coming out. But then you probably
just me. I bet you just did it again, though. Then once you realized what you did, and then you were like, oh, now they think I'm an idiot for this. They before they were looking at me because I was bald. Now they're looking at me because
wrong.
Right. But instead of flipping it to like, oh, okay, they weren't worried I was bald. You're like, oh, now they think I'm an idiot because I forgot my mask. Like, it's just constant. Like,
and what an idiot I feel like, because here I am, like, and then I got into my brain that, oh, I feel like now I feel so stupid because I teach other people not to judge each other. And here I'm fucking judging them.
You're like reverse judging them.
Right. And then I've not had my mask on, and then I feel like I've been called out in front of these tables of strangers. So then I feel like a super idiot, and oh man, that stayed with me all day. And that's just it. Like, until you, you really, what's the word I'm looking for? Until you really acknowledge that, you don't know what it is, and it can just fucking spiral. And I mean, we've done the work enough to know, okay, this is starting to happen, and those thoughts are starting to kind of ruminate and stop it before it gets out of hand. But there's people who I would hate to think would go home and wouldn't leave their house again all day because they'd feel so embarrassed or feel shamed or whatever, right? And it's like, we're just set up to not totally. And I just, sorry to the people in the restaurant I was at that I judged you, because I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. Like,
I'm judging you for judging me. Now I'm judging me for judging you for judging me. Welcome to the judgment train of the perfectionist mind.
I felt so bad. I felt so bad. And that's just it. Like, I jumped right to that place. And as soon as it happened, I was like, fuck, Vanessa, you know better than that. Like, of course they're not staring at you because you're bald. And I never even clued in that, like, I can feel the wind on my face. What's different, right?
Yeah.
It was so, I felt so bad in that moment. And I felt bad for about an hour afterwards. And then I really had to sit down, and I journaled about it. And I really had to sit down and like walk myself through it. Yeah. Because I was like, fuck, I felt like an idiot.
Right. But that's it. That's it. The perfectionist mindset. Another line I really liked from the article I read about it that really kind of sums it up in a really easy to understand way, because I totally understand that some people might not identify, like they might not think, well, I don't care if things are perfect. But it doesn't necessarily transpire that way with everybody. One of the ways that the authors of this article said it was that perfectionists feel every bump in the road. They're quite stress sensitive. And I was like, Yes, like that. If every little misstep, and you might not identify it as perfectionism, but if every little thing that goes wrong or goes against you or doesn't go right, like rubs you the wrong way, that's what it is. Right? Like whether you identify it as striving for perfection or not. Yeah, perfectionists feel every bump in the road.
Oh, that one lands hard.
Yeah, like just so concise and so clear. And so that's how I felt too when I read it. I was like, if you don't connect with the perfectionism definition that Vanessa gave us earlier, or the overachieving kind of mentality, or the unrealistic expectations and standards, perfectionists feel every bump in the road is probably something that you can be like, I get it.
Well, and it comes full circle to like what we're trying to do with this podcast.
And that's where we really,
no, like with this podcast, like we just really want to show like there's going to be bumps in the road. That's just life, right? And we want to just show that although the bumps, like we would hope that you would feel the bumps in the road because it means you're human, right? Like I think to be able to say, you know, whether or not you have perfectionism or not, even if you do, awesome, you're having a human experience, right? And I think that with
doesn't
what we're
mean
trying,
there's something wrong with you.
No, and I think like,
but it is something to be worked on.
Totally, and I think that that's just it. Is even with this podcast, like both of us, you know, our whole goal with this podcast is show people like it's okay to have the human experience, and it's okay to do. And I mean, it's not just in perfectionism, but it's okay to have failures, and it's okay to have achievements, and it's okay to do the things. We hope that you know, speaking about these hard topics and stuff, that it shows people that are listening that yes, okay, like I resonate with that, or maybe I don't, but to be able to acknowledge it and do something about it, right? And how you can do something about it, because I think that it's really sad for me to think back even 5 years ago and look at the person that I was and think, I didn't do so many things because I was afraid of what people were going to think about me. Or I didn't do so many things because I was afraid that I was going to show up small. And I still struggle with that. I still struggle with thinking, well, you know, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, but then, you know, what are people going to think? Because that's like a beginner thing to do. But it's like, fuck, I'm still a beginner in a lot of things.
Yeah.
I'm no expert in everything, right? Like, and so,
and not everybody who is an expert just was immediately an expert. No. That's not how it works. So you sometimes you just got to learn how to jump and figure out how to fly on the way down, right?
Build your airplane on the way down.
That's
110%. Right. Yeah. So good. Do you have anything else that you want to say?
No, I think we should wrap up and just say that, you know, hopefully this resonated with some people. And hopefully these are, you know, some things that you can think about, ruminate on. If you need help with figuring out how to deal with perfectionism, or any, like if you feel like maybe you associated with some of the physical side effects of it as well, like definitely don't be afraid to speak to a medical professional and get that help, whether it's your doctor, psychiatrist, whatever it is. If it's not that bad for you, you could work with a coach like Vanessa or myself that's been through this kind of thing. We can help you work through it, teach you tools how to help mitigate it. And it'll not only help your internal dialogue, it'll help how you perceive other people in the world, your kids, your spouses, your family, your friends, all of it, right? Like learning about this and learning how to deal with it and how to get better at it, because it's never going to go away. It's just going to make you and everybody around you better. So
110%. Absolutely. And that's just it. You don't have to do this alone. And I think that that's one of the reasons why we wanted to start this podcast, was just because there's so many people, especially right now with the year that we've had, that for financial reasons or just whatever, like it doesn't matter, that we want to be able to reach out to the people that need support and need new ideas. And like we said before, it's something that we want people to have the human experience. We're not perfect. I'd hope to God that you're not perfect. I love that everybody's imperfect, but don't let that imperfection stop you from trying to do the things.
Yeah.
Right. Because those are the things that scare you the most are usually the things that have meaning to you. And those are the things that I really hope you pursue, because the world needs you. The world needs those things from you. Right. So, and
if we can leave you with anything today, it's just to drop the perfectionism, quit striving for it, and instead think progress over perfection in all your decisions.
Absolutely. Well, friends, thank you guys for joining us for, I don't even know what episode this is now. Episode 6? Episode 6!
Is it?
We've got to 6. Woo woo. High five. Progress, not perfection, got us to 6.
That's right.
So crazy.
Yes.
We would love to hear if you have any questions about today's episode. Please feel free to leave them in the comments, and we'll definitely acknowledge them on a future episode for you. But if you're following along, if you haven't already subscribed to our channels, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, and if you want to watch our beautiful faces having the conversation, you can find us on YouTube. But please hit some buttons and hit subscribe if you'd like. Otherwise, I think that's it for me. Do you have anything you'd like to say, Amanda?
We really appreciate the reviews that have been rolling in. I know there's been a lot of really kind words over the last week or two as we get some more episodes out there. And you guys make our day when you tag us on social media and stuff to say that you resonated or you took something away from our podcast. And reviews really help podcasts climb up the charts. And we would love for our message to just reach more and more people. And because we don't do sponsorships or anything like that, you guys are our way to get our podcast out there. So keep leaving us reviews, write a review if you're so inclined. We would be so grateful, and share the message with people that you think it would resonate with as well. So
absolutely. We are so grateful. So grateful. Yes, we got to do a podcast on gratitude.
Yes, put that in will.
Yes, 110%.
Put it in the notes. Let's do
it. Well, friends, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you guys soon. Bye, Amanda. Bye.